Namaste. Today we have a very interesting guest with us, Sai Phanindra, who works for PwC in Pittsburgh, USA, in their computational biology division, which is a very fascinating emerging discipline that is on the intersection of biology, computation, and mathematics, and solving very difficult problems in terms of drug discovery and finding ways so that human life gets better. So I found time from him and thought I'll pick his brains on what is this discipline and where did he end up in this discipline, what did he study, how does he see India and Rishihood contributing in this space. So welcome Saiji,
Namaste.
welcome to Rishihood.
Thank you.
So very fascinating topic, very interdisciplinary topic. We don't get to hear about it as much in India,
Right.
about computation and biology intersecting. So maybe if you could give us a brief orientation to novices who are watching us about what is the space of computational biology.
Definitely. So, computational biology is, as you said, it's an interdisciplinary field. It kind of encompasses, like, it combines data analysis, biological, like, understanding, then simulation, modeling, mathematical methods, and also like computational techniques to kind of provide insights and into the biological system. So it's a really fascinating field, and I'm glad that like my education at IIT Guwahati like kind of exposed me to this space. And there's a lot of advancements in that field since I did my undergrad, and there's a lot more scope for the future. So we'll kind of go deeper into all of that during the discussion. But
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. So you're saying it's an emerging field just between your education at IIT and now you think the space has evolved a lot.
right.
Not too many disciplines can claim to be changing at such a rapid space. So you tell us, maybe you said that it has a lot of applications. So let's start with that. That where does this domain find its applications?
Right. So if you just go back and trace back its origin, so it started as it was focused more on like sequence analysis, so like DNA sequence analysis or protein sequences. So it was more focused on that. Like the field kind of roughly started around like 1960s. So that's when people trace its origin. When someone named Margaret Dayhoff, she wrote a program to do the protein sequence, kind of alignment and all that. So later on, around that time, people also did some work in like structural. So they call it like protein structure, like understanding protein structures or molecular dynamic simulations. So these were the two main areas in that time. But later, in around 1990s, when the Human Genome Project started, around that time, the field kind of also shifted in terms of thinking more systems level, like thinking about a human being. So then systems biology kind of evolved around that time. And my area of interest is more in systems biology. So I'll kind of share more applications from that space. But yeah, overall, if you want to think about applications, I would put them in 4 different buckets. So right now, one is around like genomics, precision medicine, that's like a emerging field. Then systems biology and applications to drug discovery. Then synthetic biology is another field. So these are like the 4 different fields.
Okay. Very fascinating. Because when I studied, I would typically think of human beings as atoms, right?
Right.
And molecules, and you said systems, right? So there is different circulatory system, digestive system. These are all operating and working together. You are kind of reducing a human being or trying to understand a human being in the sense of bits, right? So when you say computational, you are kind of trying to understand how it happens. You're making mathematical models
Right.
of a human being. That's very fascinating because it allows you to do many things at a much lower cost, possibly, because you could simulate, is a word I heard from you. You can kind of simulate how a human being is, and you are saying you can possibly predict the impact of a medical intervention on a human being without actually doing that intervention, right? So can you tell, when you use this word precision medicine, can you elaborate that for me?
Right. So precision medicine is kind of a term that's used more with like the genomics field, where the idea is that like once now that the whole genome sequencing has become really cheap. So initially when the Human Genome Project started, like I think it cost about like 100 million or 150 million dollars to sequence one human genome. But now people can do it with like within $1,000 or so.
Wow.
So because it's so cheap, we can actually like sequence individual genomes and then look at what the disease associated variants. So if there is a particular mutation or a variant, gene variant in a particular person that causes a certain disease, you could identify that. You could kind of predict the probability of that individual getting the disease. So kind of using that information to kind of target the therapy. So that's what the precision medicine field is. The predictive modeling field is a separate one where the idea is once you understand a system, like let's say a circulatory system or your like digestive system, like once you understand that, then we can actually simulate how it behaves. So it's kind of similar to weather prediction models. Like once you understand how the system works, you can actually predict what will happen in the future. And there are also like limitations to how much like how accurate will that be and things like that. But the idea is to kind of give us a line of sight into the future.
Wow. So let's come to the prediction part of it. So you're saying kind of if you understand me very well, you can possibly say what diseases I might get 10 years from now. Is that true?
Yeah, so in fact, so I work for PwC and I'm part of this, lead this team called Bodylogical. So it's a simulation platform. And we actually published our diabetes model. So it's basically using that model, we can look at a person's current health status, like their biomarkers, their people go for annual health checkups and do the blood tests. So we can take all of that data and then kind of using the model, we can kind of predict how, let's say, like within how many years will the person develop diabetes. If a person is pre-diabetic, will it take like 5 years or 6 years for them to become diabetic? So things like that we can actually do.
Interesting. So I'm assuming a lot of insurance companies would be very interested in this, because
they are.
If insurance companies can prevent me from going to a hospital, it makes a lot of financial sense for them and also financial sense for me. So is insurance companies very interested in what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's almost like kind of risk profiling individuals, like whether a person is at risk for a particular disease. So that's something that's definitely like insurance companies are really interested in.
Okay.
So they can also like target some interventions to these people who are at risk, if they can identify from their member base whoever is at risk for, let's say, diabetes or a particular disease. They can then focus their attention. It's kind of improves their efficiency as well.
So what does it take for you to simulate me? Does it take, I mean, would you need some devices embedded into me? What does it take to interpret me? What is the kind of data that you would use?
So the kind of predictive modeling that I'm talking about is it's called systems dynamics model or mechanistic model. So these are the technical terms for it. So the foundation for that is first we need to understand the system that we are simulating. So it's similar to like first principles based modeling, if people are familiar with that. So for simulating a human being, then we need to it's a lofty goal, right? So we start with simpler systems or smaller systems to begin with. Let's say I did some work in like understanding the gastrointestinal tract. So first I understand how the entire GI system works, and then kind of convert that knowledge into what is called like a network of interaction. So there are different cells involved, there are different tissues. So and there are different molecules that cells interact using these molecules. So we kind of build a network of that and then convert that into a mathematical model. And then kind of using the systems dynamics principles, we kind of build a simulation model out using the mathematical, using the differential equations and all that. So that's how we kind of go about building that. So it's a lot of knowledge that we need to kind of take in, like digest from the literature, basic science literature. So we read a lot of papers to understand what's the level of understanding of that system, and then convert all of that into a simulation model. So it's to build a simulation model itself, it takes multiple like skills. So you need to know, at least understand biology of that system, then kind of convert that into equations, so mathematics, then systems dynamics, then programming to kind of build a model, simulation model. So it's almost like at least 4 or 5 skills needed.
So we'll come to that because very interesting. People would leave math to get into biology.
Right.
But your domain is, you understand, you're saying you build on a lot of life sciences literature already there for centuries.
Right.
You build mathematical models on that, and then you bring in computer science to possibly encode it, program it.
Right.
So we'll come to that. What does it take to traverse so many disciplines? But I want to go back, and the other application you talked about is personalized medicine or customized medicine. So, I mean, very interesting. So you would say that for my particular profile, given that I am pre-diabetic, you would possibly have a very different intervention for me compared to anybody else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go to very generic drugs where you go to say, and I want something like a medicine for reducing my sugar. But you are saying this is very personalized, so it's possibly more effective as well.
Right, right. So with the diabetes, especially, like these are like metabolic diseases, right? So we could lifestyle interventions also play a role. So in addition to drugs, what we also do is like, how does a particular lifestyle impact the patient? So in our diabetes model, we also have the component, lifestyle component as well. So if a particular level of activity or a change in diet, like what is the impact of that on the patient, in addition to like taking medications and all that. So we could kind of simulate different combinations and then find what's optimal for that specific individual.
Wow. Are these drugs already out in the market?
Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, the diabetes drugs are like metformin and all, these are all already in the market, like people use that. But what value a modeling exercise would add is, like, let's say you go to like someone who is diabetic goes to a doctor, and then the doctor says, okay, you need to take these medications, but you also need to like sleep more, you know, probably 8 hours, or you need to reduce your diet. But not everyone can actually like do that.
Yeah.
So we identify like the optimal, using the simulation model, we could identify what's the optimal combination of lifestyle parameters along with the medications that could give best results.
So it's very interesting. So for example, if I understand drug discovery, when they are doing the drug testing, the clinical trials, they would get different profiles or different races across the world, and they would possibly come up with a drug. But this is very, very specific. You are telling me that given I am in North India, primarily with a wheat and rice diet, in a colder part of India, you would possibly have something very different for me compared to the same person in the United States, right?
Right. So the way we do that is using like what we call as like virtual patients, and so you have like the model is the same, but there are some parameters in the model that you could tweak, and for a different population, you would have a different set of parameters.
So virtual patient is kind of something in the cyberspace. You have something and you do an intervention.
Right.
Look at so the cost of drug discovery also will possibly go down. Otherwise, you might find it very difficult and the time taken would be very long. So now you can possibly simulate it on a computer itself.
Right, right. And there are like specific applications within drug discovery, like for the kind of modeling, predictive modeling. There are, you know, like basic, like at least like in the discovery. So there are like in different stages of drug discovery, there could be different applications. For example, like in preclinical, like or early stages, right? Like if there are multiple drug candidates, you could kind of if you have a disease platform, simulation platform for a particular disease, we could simulate which one of those candidates would give better results, and kind of focus efforts, development efforts more on that. So it's called like prioritizing the portfolio of drugs. So that's one application. So they're like that. There are multiple applications. So like people use modeling for kind of informing the doses in phase 2, phase 3 trials. So dose optimization, and this is also another application.
Okay, so I see a lot of implications in reducing the time to discover a drug, the costs, but also a lot of ethical advantages because you may not want to, a lot of ethical questions being asked on lab specimens, on human
Right.
subjects. Is it fair to even do all this? But you are saying that you could possibly bypass them. Is that true?
It's true, and in fact, like we are actually, at the right time to kind of ask these questions because recently, like India passed, I think it was this summer, they passed an act to kind of reduce animal testing in drug discovery, specifically in the preclinical stage when a lot of mouse or like rodents and primates, testing is done on them to look at the safety, like the toxicity of drugs. So FDA passed the same thing in 2022, like in December 2022, and I think EMEA, the European agency, did that in 2021. And EMEA also had like a plan for up till 2035. They want to eliminate, kind of reduce all of that. So they also have like an action plan for that.
Oh,
So it's a really exciting
yeah.
time for. I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this field is, from that ethical point of view, reducing the animal,
Yeah. Yeah.
testing and all in research, right? So and also like there are a lot of think tanks in India that are focusing on this aspect, like how to promote awareness
Hmm?
of alternative methods.
Nice, nice.
Um, yeah.
So India is a very different country in many ways also because of its civilizational past. It's not only about the regulatory agencies. There are traditions here like the Jain tradition about which you would be very aware of, right?
Yeah.
They are very, very keen that they would cause the least
Harm to.
harm,
Right.
least violence. So
Right.
they are not very comfortable consuming drugs which have had an animal testing behind them.
Exactly.
So I mean, it is self-regulated that this would be a great thing for them as well, saying that this is in that sense animal tested free.
Right. Right.
Have you ever come across this elsewhere that there is people who would do it for their own personal self-regulated way or their tradition says so, and India is very unique at that because of non-violence being a very core part of our civilizational beliefs.
Right, right. And a lot of NGOs also kind of are promoting,
Hmm?
are kind of almost like, like advocating for this, right? I think recently, probably like a couple of years ago, like there was uh, a change that was brought in for at least cosmetics, like when people test cosmetics on animals, I think that kind of was stopped.
Hmm?
So now it's now coming into the drug space where, for drug development and drug testing, preclinical stages, like, they want to eliminate or reduce animal testing. So I think we are moving towards that, like, and definitely like computational biology has a big role to play.
Mhm. Very interesting. So, I mean, this sounds like almost too good to be true, right? So many things are happening. I'm sure the computational power is increasing, cloud storage is increasing.
Yeah.
So, you can keep converting humans into bits, understand us better, bring in more parameters, crunch more data.
Right.
But do you see one is a technological boundary in some ways that, oh, we have not been able to crack this problem yet? And do you see a larger limitation to the way we are approaching it itself? I mean, in both ways that maybe we cannot solve some things which human beings are beyond just being converted into programs and bits. So, on both ways, do you see technological boundaries currently?
Yeah, so I mean, there are definitely technological like challenges. Like one is, for example, when you have a simulation model and you want to create a virtual representation of an individual using that model. So there's another term called digital twin of a real individual. So digital twins are in different industries, and they are coming to healthcare right now, like the applications of digital twins in healthcare. But to kind of create a digital twin, it's a really expensive process in terms of computational resources, right? But I think as the computing power increases, I think it'll become easier or faster, cheaper to kind of create these digital twins. So that's where I think the technological boundaries in terms of like how to build or create digital twins at scale. So that's one challenge. But the other question I think you were asking more in terms of
In
the
terms of computational biology itself, does it
yeah.
have its natural limits that, oh, beyond this, possibly we cannot bring everything into a variable. Maybe there are unknown or hidden variables which we have
Right.
not discovered and possibly are beyond the material space, so we cannot possibly discover them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking a very spiritual question in that sense. Do you think that is a right approach?
Yeah, I mean, actually, like the philosophy of computational biology kind of includes that, right? Like when people build a model, the philosophy of modeling, good modeling practice is basically that you build a model, you want to build a simple model that can capture what the specific question that you're asking. And assuming that like you don't want to build a complex model and increase the complexity unnecessarily. You want to build something that's simple that answers the question. And the other thing about that is there's actually an interesting article I remember. I think this is from probably from early 2000s. This Yuri Lazebnik, I think this is the author. He wrote an article called "Can a Biologist Fix a Radio?" So in that article, he talks about how a radio, the parts in a radio, you like if you are an engineer, like electronics engineer, you know what each part represents, how they're connected, what's the function of each part, and what happens when you put it together. You can kind of break it down and put it back, and you can actually like repair a radio, right? But that's not possible with a human being. Like people in basic science research, we try to like focus on one particular cell or a tissue, and it's more a reductionist approach that's being taken in science. But I think we cannot kind of do that. I think his point was like more of it's difficult for a biologist to fix a radio because human being is not a simple machine, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think systems level thinking is what the systems biology focus on, where things put together kind of give some emergent properties, like things kind of come out of how different parts are organized. But even then, each individual is different. There is a lot of variability in patient between individuals. So you kind of take all of that into account, and also understand that models are not completely accurate. You cannot like accurately predict one individual. So I think that understanding should be there. It's just a tool to help you out, but it's not. It's not like it will not predict your future.
Because what you're saying is very interesting. It is also a form of, I would say, technological humility.
Yeah.
That we know our boundaries.
Right.
For example, in the Indian philosophy, we have different levels of a human being. It's called the Panchakoshas.
Right.
So there is a Annamaya Kosha, it's called, which is like the material space, our body, right? Then there is something called a Pranamaya Kosha, which is like the energy space, which goes a bit beyond the material space. Then you have something called the Manomaya Kosha, which is the mind.
Right.
Then you have the Vijnanamaya Kosha, that's the intellect. And then you have the Anandamaya Kosha, that is the bliss body.
Right.
So it said that together these 5 layers of the body encompass a human being. So what I understand you saying, if I have to reduce it, is that we're possibly understanding the material space very well.
Right.
But there are other spaces which might not be in this domain, or we may need much more time to do it.
Right.
So it's otherwise there's a tendency that you throw more computation power at something and the problem gets solved.
Right.
But I think time will tell us how much we can interpret. So let's go back a bit to your choice as a career. You initially also mentioned that you find this space very fascinating, but it's also very challenging because you will have to master many domains.
Right.
Biology, I understand, right? Maths, computational sciences, possibly other things like chemistry, other things are also involved. So how do you master so many different domains to be able to influence or even crack these cutting edge problems?
So I mean, it goes back to my like training as an undergrad. Like I went to IIT Guwahati. So I did my bachelor's in biotechnology. But that time, like we had the flexibility to kind of choose different electives, and I was more fascinated by computation. Like I used to take courses in math and computer science. But then I had like really interesting courses on systems biology that kind of brought a lot of change in how I see things and my appreciation towards biology. And kind of everything came together in that course because it needed math. You had to understand how to code. So that kind of gave me a push to kind of pursue this. And general, like my tendency of like that there is a scope or potential for this field to impact or reduce animal usage in research. And even during PhD, I remember like I used to have a lot of conversations with people who used to do lab like animal research, and like how basically like ethical dilemma,
Wow.
ethical questions,
Right.
and how this field can kind of impact that. And
Wow.
we used to have like conversations about that. Now when you're talking about it, it kind of came back to me. But I think these different factors kind of motivate me to kind of still pursue, like learn more in this field. And now there are a lot of advances in analytics, machine learning, and a lot of that also finding applications
Wow.
in computational biology.
Wow. So one is your ethical motivation.
Right.
That is one. One is also you find the intersection of disciplines to be an exciting space.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
math on its own possibly is there. I mean, a lot of work has happened. Biology on its own, a lot of would have happened. Computation on its own. But bringing this
Together.
creates very interesting problem statements. But unfortunately, in India, there has not been too much focus on multidisciplinary education, right? For example, possibly the generation that we come from, we
Right.
made very clear choices of, oh, math or biology, right?
Right.
Or medical or engineering. But then you are kind of at the intersection of both of them. So we see that evolving a lot now, that there are, given what's happening globally, that awareness is coming. But institutions here have not responded to it as much because the entire academic training has to change, right? Right from, I mean, you did a PhD, it's very multidisciplinary. But then typically there's a tendency to super specialize in one discipline and they are unable to see the other discipline happening. And you are both trying to solve the same problem in very different ways. But if you had sat together in the same discussion group, you would have possibly come up with very interesting solutions.
Right.
Like, I mean, I've seen this a lot in the West, right? The research groups there are very multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a bit about how this education has shaped you, this multidisciplinary education, your worldviews, how it has enhanced your thinking? What do you see in the institutions of the West from which we could learn a few things?
Right.
Your educational experience, yeah, please.
Yeah. So again, I think some institutions definitely in India still have that, like they promote multidisciplinary training. I remember when I got into IIT and took biotechnology, it was almost like a gamble for me because everyone goes to IITs for engineering and I'm going there for biotechnology. It was like back in 2004. It was a gamble, like but it was interesting. Like it was got a lot of opportunity to explore different things, and definitely in the West you see a lot of that as an undergrad. Like you are you have that flexibility to explore different streams, and people kind of take major, minor, like different minors as well to kind of based on their interests, right? And I think, as you rightly mentioned, like when you do actually go, when you start working, like you see a lot of these like interdisciplinary teams, the people that work in. So I think initially, like from the beginning, like having that mindset and having that training will help you perform well in those settings, because now you can actually speak multiple languages, kind of interact with people from different backgrounds, technical backgrounds, I mean, well. So I think having that interdisciplinary training is really important in my opinion. I think you should be like really good in one thing, but also have flexibility and kind of understanding or learning other things.
Interesting. You're almost like talking what Rishihood, the motivation to build Rishihood was this, right?
Right.
I mean, we all went through the education that we had and we always felt that something different should happen. Like me personally also went to the West. I saw a very different type of training that I underwent there at University of Washington.
Right.
I always felt, why should we not build universities, more of them? Possibly at undergrad level. It is maybe happening at graduate and the postdoctoral level, but can it happen at a undergraduate level? So then exactly the thing that you mentioned, that bringing in a very different foundational curriculum at Rishihood, which gives them a wide perspective of things, which also builds their social and moral compass in
Hmm.
many ways, right? That's
Right.
very important because that is what keeps you motivated in life.
Right.
Then you also bring different disciplines through a combination of majors and minors. Then you have an opportunity to choose a research area in your fourth year. So that is the kind of education that we want to build at Rishihood. And I'm very proud that you are associated with Rishihood University, right? In our leadership circle, you have contributed financially, you are contributing through your knowledge. Um, Many of your generation who have went to the West and got the best of the education, done well professionally, when we ask them to give back to Rishihood, primarily their motivation is for very social causes. Nothing wrong with that, but it
Hmm.
is primarily at a more basic level of school education possibly, or helping people in good education in terms of financially contributing, or in terms of you have humanitarian causes of some disaster happening, or religious causes, but you have chosen to be a part of a university in institution building.
Right.
So why is that important? Why do you think it is about time that we have to contribute towards building institutions in India?
Yeah, I think going back to my like principles. Like I feel we come from a civilization that is knowledge based, right? So we are a knowledge based civilization, and for a long time, because of various like reasons, we have been in the knowledge preserving mode, right? But I think at some point, we need to kind of move towards that generating that knowledge, and for that you need institutions. Institutions like Rishihood, as you mentioned, like you focus on building the social and moral compass in undergrad students, and I feel like I don't think a lot any or not many institutions actually do that or focus on that, and I think that's really important. Like with all the education that we are getting, if we lack that, then you're actually like not a complete individual if you're lacking that part, right? So that's what appealed to me when you kind of presented Rishihood, the focus areas, or like how what you want to like in terms of the ideal student coming out of Rishihood and all that. So that vision really clicked with me, and then and institutions are needed to kind of build these type of people, right? So that's why I was really excited to kind of contribute in different ways.
Additionally, I think one is on the individual level, creating good individuals is one thing. But what I saw in the West also is a lot of institutions have existed for centuries,
Yeah.
right? And in many ways, they have shaped the destiny of the country itself,
Yeah.
right? Not just in terms of Nobel laureates or other things, but in terms of whatever they have contributed in terms of industry, in terms of research, in terms of producing great leaders. Right? Every institution out there would go and say, "Oh, we have the former
Alumni.
right senators have come from here,
Right.
governors
Right.
have come from here, they have gone on to build great enterprises, provided lakhs and lakhs of jobs, right? So institutions, somehow here we don't think in terms of centuries, we
Hmm.
think very short term. So do you think institutions have a role in nation building as well?
Yeah, I think I mean you do see that a lot more in West, but I mean institutions are needed for nation building, and you rightly said that we don't focus on the long term aspect of that, and that's probably why you don't see a lot of support in kind of people coming up or stepping up to kind of promote supporting these institutions. But I think what you are doing in terms of like Rishihood here, uh, I feel like building into like creating individuals who are focused in terms of like nation building, having different skill sets, having interdisciplinary skill sets, and with that mindset, I think it's really necessary. And I think institutions like these definitely help in kind of shaping the nation. I think we have seen a lot of thinkers and all come from like great institutions, right? So we do need such places. Yeah.
Thank you. We are very proud to have you associated with us
Thank you.
because we share a very similar vision in that sense.
Yeah.
And in that sense, building Rishihood together would be a lot of fun working with you. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. I
Yeah.
mean, a very new discipline like computational biology and putting it in layman's perspective. and also giving us a vision of how you made this career possible.
Yeah.
So we hope many such Sai Phanindras come out of Rishihood University when they graduate, go on and choose these very interesting spaces to work and solve global challenges.
Yeah.
And being grounded in India, understanding our social and moral compass, being guided by that, and building great enterprises, building great research labs, and shaping the world. Thank you once again for sparing your time, and we look forward to having more such conversations with you going forward.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, and I really hope I can contribute a bit more to Rishihood.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.